Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into some source material you sent over, focusing on Daymond John's book, The Power of Broke. Really fascinating ideas in here.
Yeah, definitely. And we're working directly from the audiobook transcript, so we're getting his perspective, like, right from the source.
Exactly. And he's known as the people shark, right?
Yeah.
So he brings this very specific kind of street-level view that you don't always get in, standard business talks.
Mm-hmm. It's a different angle.
So our mission today, unpack this power of broke thing. What does it actually mean? How can having less be, powerful?
We want to pull out those key nuggets, give you that shortcut to understanding this pretty unique approach to business.
Yeah.
And life, really.
Okay, let's get into it. The core concept is right there in the title. Being broke, having very limited resources. That's not just a problem, it can be an edge.
That's the central idea. He talks about being up against all odds, down to your last dime.
Right.
And he says that's when you have no choice but to succeed. It forces you to double down, dig deep, and switch into that relentless turbo mode.
That relentless turbo mode, I like that. It's like taking that half-court shot he mentions. The one others are maybe too comfortable or too scared to take.
Precisely. Because why is it powerful? Well, it forces you to act. It makes you take the shot, like that Wayne Gretzky quote he uses. We miss 100% of the shots we don't take.
So take the shot.
Yeah.
When you have to take it, when there's no safety net, that sheer need becomes like your main fuel. It gives you that one reason you keep going, even if there are a million reasons telling you to stop.
And he contrasts that directly with starting out flush.
Right.
With lots of resources.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast. He says, when you start with all kinds of resources, when failure isn't about to break you, well, then you're standing still.
Standing still. Wow. So the power comes from the need. Exactly. He literally says there's power in being broke because the more you need to succeed, the more likely it is that you will succeed. It shifts the focus. It's not just financial investment anymore.
It's deeper.
Yeah. It becomes about emotional and personal investment. That's where the real drive comes from, according to him.
So it's the struggle itself, having to scrape and scramble, as he puts it.
That scraping and scrambling, well, it builds something. It builds resilience, that fire inside a hunger, a willingness to do whatever it takes to succeed.
Like grit.
Pure grit. He uses that quote from Liz Clayman's father, which is just brilliant. I've given you every advantage in life except for being disadvantaged.
Oof, yeah.
Constantly hearing no, being told you can't do something that can actually make the eventual yes incredibly powerful. It fuels that hunger he talks about.
It really flips the script on what disadvantage means.
Okay.
So moving from that, he connects this whole idea really strongly to authenticity, keeping it real.
Absolutely. That's a huge theme. The argument is that real value, the stuff that lasts, it comes from something pure, something real.
Not just fancy packaging or a big budget.
Right. It has to have its own beating heart. You can't fake that core element.
And the examples he gives really hit home, like indie films versus blockbusters.
Yeah, the indie film that stirs souls compared to the big budget spectacle. Or the street artists at Art Basel with that raw energy versus the established, maybe more sterile galleries.
People crave that realness.
Totally. And look at FUBU. For us, by us. That wasn't cooped up in a boardroom.
Right, it came from the streets.
It reflected their world, their community. It was authentic. And that's what resonated and captured a massive market. He even points to haute couture's origins.
Which started as just practical dressmaking.
Yeah, for plain folks.
Yeah.
Before it became this, symbol of ultimate luxury. The principle applies to relationships, too, he argues. The ones that last are pure, real, not based on superficial stuff like money or looks.
So how does that translate directly to building a business?
Well, the idea is a business needs that same solid foundation. It needs to be built on something genuine.
Otherwise,
if it's just a superficial enterprise built on flashy gimmicks, inflated hopes, and a big budget, the odds are stacked against it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have that staying power.
And that feels even more true today, doesn't it, in our hyper-connected digital world?
Oh, for sure. He makes the point that the power has shifted to the people. And those buzzwords you hear everywhere, transparency and authenticity, they're not just jargon. People demand it now.
You can see it in bigger movements, too.
Definitely. He mentions social movements, like in Egypt, Tunisia, Hong Kong, those Facebook umbrella revolutions. They didn't win because they had huge marketing budgets.
They won because they felt real. They resonated.
Exactly. They were real. Money alone can't force that connection. It's the force of that single idea offered in a genuine way that actually breaks through barriers.
That genuine connection. Okay, let's pivot a bit and look at how this power of broke philosophy really showed up in Daymond John's own early life. The source material has some powerful stories there.
Oh, yeah. A really core one is about his mother, her sacrifice. When he was just starting high school, she took out this huge mortgage on their house, $80,000.
Which sounds like seed money, but it wasn't really for a business, was it? Not directly.
Not initially, no. It was incredibly strategic. The goal was for her to cut back her work hours, be home more, basically keep him on the straight and narrow in their neighborhood.
That was the investment.
That was her investment in me, as he puts it. He calls mothers the ultimate startups are true angel investors. It's like comparing it to Jobs and Wozniak selling their car and calculator. It's that deep personal stake, not just cash.
And her being there created these anchors for him, like the story about the two clocks.
Yeah, the Concorde landing and the Empire State Building lights, those were his cues, his clocks, telling him when he needed to be home. It's this really vivid image of, boundaries in her presence.
And now his office is in the Empire State Building. Kind of amazing.
Full circle, right?
Yeah.
A constant reminder.
You can see that hustle, that entrepreneurial spirit, even when he was super young. Born out of need, it seems.
Totally. That snow shoveling business, he started around age 10 or 11. It wasn't just basic shoveling.
He was already thinking bigger.
Instinctively. Offering free spring cleanup to get exclusive winter contracts. That's leverage, right? Hiring other kids for lawn mowing, but making them help with the free cleanups. Resource management.
Without any business school jargon, just figuring it out.
Necessity was his teacher, pure and simple.
And the van story really hammers home that affordable next steps idea.
Oh, yeah. Instead of getting some cool car to impress people, he buys this $12,000 beat-up van.
Not flashy.
Not at all. It was purely an investment. An investment in his first real business idea that share a ride service, basically running parallel to the city bus route, but cheaper.
And more convenient, right. Door-to-door service, even giving credit like a local store.
Like a mom-and-pop bodega, yeah.
Yeah.
He was competing directly with the established systems, the bus, taxis, because he had to. He needed to make it work.
Even though the ride service itself eventually got shut down because of tickets.
Right, but the van didn't become useless. It became a crucial asset for his next venture, hauling clothes for the business that would become FUB. Again, resourcefulness born from having limited options, making things work.
The book is packed with other case studies, too, showing this power of broke idea from different angles. We should touch on a few of those.
Yeah, there are some great ones. Like the Instagram artist, that one really speaks to the digital age.
Okay, tell us about that.
So this artist, pretty young, makes something like $1.3 million selling limited edition T-shirts featuring his artwork.
$1.3 million.
Get this. Directly to his Instagram followers. He had over 100,000. He'd do these 24-hour pre-order windows.
Wow. Okay, so thinking about the power of broke there.
Well, minimal startup costs, right? No inventory risk
Yeah.
because it's all pre-sold. He keeps the entire profit margin. He's just using a new form of delivery Instagram for what's basically an old playbook strategy.
Like digital direct mail.
Exactly. High conversion rate from a dedicated audience. It just reinforces Daymond's point.
Yeah.
No new ideas, only new ways to execute those ideas.
That's smart. What about the story of the older couple? That one sounded tough.
Yeah, that was a powerful example of resilience. A carpenter and an efficiency expert.
Yeah.
They lost everything, income, home, in the 2008 recession.
It's a total rock bottom.
Pretty much. No safety net. But what did they have? Their skills. Existing skills.
Okay.
So they pivoted. They started building these elaborate miniature dog houses for, wealthy clients with pampered pets.
Miniature dog houses, really?
Yep. And they ended up doing $2.5 million in sales.
Wow. How did they even find those clients?
They had to get creative. They actually used Facebook geotargeting really effectively,
Yeah.
which is interesting, right? Digital immigrants, older folks, figuring out these new tools because they had to. Necessity forced them to learn and adapt when the old ways vanished.
That's incredible. Necessity driving innovation again. What about Steve Aoki? His story sounds like pure hustle.
Oh, completely. Dim Mac Records, he started that with like $400.
$400, that's it.
That was the seed money. Then he maxed out credit cards, ran up like $90,000 in debt,
Yikes.
and was running the whole thing from this tiny apartment crammed with 13 interns. It was, in his words, a desperation plan, a survival plan.
Just trying to stay afloat.
Exactly. Every penny they made from one release went straight into funding the next one. There was no cushion.
So what kept him going through all that debt and chaos?
Pure passion. He just fundamentally believed in it. I felt it. The music was everything. That was the fuel, not a big bank account.
He calls that the make a beautiful mess stage, right? The scraping and hustling.
Yeah, that's the mess. And the goal, the set a goal part, initially it was just keeping the lights on, funding the next tiny step. It's such a different path than, say, what his wealthy father might have envisioned for him.
It really shows how that drive can come from different places. Digital savvy, adapting skills, or just raw passion when you have nothing else.
All roads leading back to making it work with what you've got, or what you don't have.
Okay, this actually leads perfectly into another really critical point from the source material. The potential downside of having too much money, especially too early.
Right, it sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Most people think more money is always better.
But Daymond warns against it, taking too much funding, bringing in investors too soon.
He does. He uses this hypothetical example of a cupcake shop. Imagine someone gets, say, $100,000 right at the start.
Okay.
They spend it all on fancy rent, top-of-the-line ovens, big marketing campaigns, before they've even sold one cupcake, before they know if people actually want their cupcakes.
And if the concept flops?
Then you're stuck. Huge debt. Maybe you gave away a big chunk of your company for nothing. He contrasts that with what he calls colossal bootstrapping.
Starting much smaller.
Way smaller. Yeah. Maybe $5,000, $10,000. You still make mistakes. Everyone does. But they're small mistakes. Cheap lessons. You learn as you go, organically.
So the key is proving the concept first. Proving it to yourself before you go asking for big bucks.
Absolutely crucial. Look at Facebook again. Zuckerberg didn't just appear with billions in funding.
Right. Started small at Harvard.
He tested it, tweaked it, learned, iterated. He proved the core idea worked step by step before scaling up massively with venture capital.
And once you have proven it, once you have cash flow, there are ways to grow without giving away the farm early on.
Yeah, he mentions alternatives.
Yeah.
Like Mark Cuban's advice. Pay down debt first. That's a guaranteed return on investment.
Okay.
Or, once you're established, maybe look for loans. Or find investors who are okay with getting paid back with interest, rather than demanding a huge equity stake when your valuation is still, kind of uncertain.
It all comes back to that principle he mentions. Don't outrun your resources.
Exactly. Because having that ready supply of cash can sometimes work against you. It sounds weird, but...
Why? Because it makes you lazy.
Sort of. It removes the necessity to be hyper-creative, super resourceful. It removes the pressure to really dig deep and understand your customer through that direct hustle. You might just throw money at problems instead of finding smarter, leaner solutions.
Because you can afford to, even if it's not the best way.
Right. The limitation forces the better solution sometimes.
So if we pull all these threads together, the power of broke isn't literally just about having $0. It's a whole mindset.
It really is. It's fueled by that necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also authenticity.
Yeah.
And this relentless drive. Passion comes up again and again. You have to adore what you do. That's the core fuel.
And that relentless part, like the sharks he mentions, keep swimming or die.
You just have to keep pushing forward, keep iterating, keep trying. And a big piece of that is knowing who you are, define yourself, recognizing that you are the brand, especially when you don't have piles of cash for marketing. Your authenticity is your capital.
Finding the opportunity within the disadvantage. Like that story about Carlos in the mailroom.
Yeah, such a simple but profound point. He only had $2 for lunch, but he figured out how to maximize it, get his hot dogs, find contentment. Meanwhile, people with way more money might be miserable. It's about perspective, resourcefulness.
And he wraps these lessons up in those shark points throughout the book, actionable principles.
Right. Things like set a goal, make a beautiful mess, stay true, keep swimming, embrace your failures.
Define yourself, do your homework, know your value.
Let it grow. Be specifically creative. Don't settle for plan B. Keep it real.
Don't outrun your resources. Think big. Go for it. They all seem to stem from that experience of operating lean.
Exactly. Limitations, forcing innovation, and building that essential grit.
So this deep dive into the power of broke really underlines that starting with less isn't necessarily the obstacle we think it is. It might actually be the secret sauce.
It really could be. It forces the things you absolutely need for long-term success.
Yeah.
That innovation, that authenticity, that relentless energy. And maybe, just maybe, having too much too soon actually prevents some of that essential development.
It's a challenging idea. So as you listen to this, think about your own situation, your own challenges, the resources you have, or maybe don't have. And here's something to chew on. If necessity really is the mother of invention, could having too much comfort, too many resources too early actually stop us from finding our deepest, most creative potential? How could you maybe apply a power of broke mindset, that forced creativity, to a challenge you're facing right now, even if you're not literally broke?